Hi. So I'm very happy to have with me a special guest today, Dr. MaryAndres, and I like to refer to her as a Yoda, a bisexual therapist. Today, welcome.
Thank you.
We will be talking about coming out as bisexual to your spouse.
Big topic.
Which is a hard one.
It is a hard one.
Is this something that you deal with
I have.
with clients before?
Yeah.
Is this like a common thing?
It's common. There are some people that come out before they get married, and there are some people that come out after they get married. So I've dealt with both.
And if a person is coming out after they got married,
Uh-huh.
or let's say that they might even have mentioned that they were bisexual, but you kind of mention it, you kind of just throw it away.
Right.
How does one talk to their married spouse that no, they are really bisexual, and they might have to start living that way in some way?
Right. What does it mean? I think that's the important conversation to have, because there are lots of conversations that married people have. Married people get married with this idea of a continual relationship, and that relationship evolves. And so people change ideas up all the time. And so maybe that idea that somebody says they're bisexual, oh, I knew that when we got married, but I buried it. And now you're bringing it up again. Why are you bringing it up now? And so it's like, what's the meaning around why now is this happening? Is there something that you're feeling or experiencing that we need to address? And those are courageous conversations. One of the things to have in the forefront of your mind is that this is my partner that I really care about, and so I want to love and appreciate my partner, and then I want to be able to talk courageously about the things that I need to say, and then I want to be able to tolerate and listen to what their responses are to what's going on.
If there is a spouse of a bisexual person who's watching this video,
Yeah.
I imagine they would be asking the question, or why would a person choose to come out as bisexual in the middle of their marriage after 5 years? Obviously there's something going on psychologically there.
Right.
So if you're the non-bisexual spouse, you're like, why now? What would be some of those reasons?
So sometimes those reasons are about authenticity. If somebody, and what happens, and I actually used to work in substance abuse treatment, so a lot of times people would medicate their sexual attractions, their same sexual attractions, or they would try to pray away the gay part of them, but they would look at like, this is a part of me I can't tolerate. But then as they start to do some work, or say, I've been really depressed, I don't want to be depressed anymore, I need to be more real, and part of my realness is I need to come to terms with being bisexual. Guess what? I have a spouse. My spouse needs to come to terms with me. But there feels like a big risk involved with that.
So if you're a spouse of someone who's bisexual and they come out to you as being bisexual, you can rest assured it's because of some sort of internal conflict, turmoil that could be reflecting itself in some negative behaviors that the person might want to address, correct?
It could be, yeah.
It could be, amongst other things.
Yeah, yeah.
And what are some of the challenges that married bisexuals have once coming out, once they've mentioned that or said that or anything along those lines, or they've been found out or anything like that?
So we live in a very puritanical culture in the United States, and the first threat that people feel, does this mean you don't want to have a monogamous relationship anymore?
Yeah.
That's usually the first conversation that people are having. And usually what happens, and this is where I would want the spouse to just chill. I know this is big information, but the person talking about it is in the conversation stage of it, potentially. Now, maybe it's somebody who's already been secretly having a bisexual experience and isn't talking about it, so that's a different thing. But sometimes if this is an identity question, and I just want you to know who I am, then tolerate that. Because a lot of times there's this push to, what does this mean, what does this mean? And the partner doesn't know. Couples therapy is a great place to be able to talk through that. I think if therapy is a slowed down conversation, when we're anxious, we want to rush conversations. Just tell me the worst, get it over with. Let me see if I can tolerate it, or do I have to divorce you right now? And they're in that all or nothing, black or white thinking. And we're talking about something that's not black or white. We're talking about something that may or may not be behavioral. There are a lot of people that are serial monogamists in terms of being bisexual,
Right.
but they don't squelch their queerness. You know, they identify that part of them that's gay. And like, I was just at a party recently with a married woman who, she's married to a man, but all of her friends are lesbian, and that's part of how she expresses being bisexual, is she's very much a part of a lesbian community with her very open-minded feminist boyfriend, her husband at this point, and kids. But that was part of her kind of settling down life.
I'll ask you this. I've done a number of videos on this channel about cheating, and I'll put my bias out there initially. I don't think cheating, not whether or not it should be tolerated, it should never be something that bisexuals feel they have a right to do.
Yeah.
Because I feel it's always about a conversation. Like, maybe you've had a conversation, maybe if you're unhappy with your relationship, maybe your spouse is unhappy too, and maybe there can be negotiation there where you both can end up happy. And cheating because you think you have some sort of right because you're attracted to both genders, that's my personal bias. I don't think it should be thought of as a right. But what and of course I'm sure you've dealt with this quite a bit.
Yeah.
You know, what do you say to a spouse of someone who might be cheating because they're bisexual that might feel they have the right to find another relationship?
I would say that your bisexual spouse is being very selfish in terms of not taking your feelings into consideration. What does this mean? You know, a lot of relationships hit rough points, and in those rough points, in gay relationships, it's like, should we have a three-way? In straight relationships, should we have a baby? You know, and people do that because they're at that brink of, should we split up or should we do something radical to save the relationship? Those aren't necessarily the best decisions, because you would bring a baby into an unhappy relationship, or sometimes that three-way is the beginning of an end for a relationship. What's important is that a relationship that might be having a tough time, you work on increasing the security and the appreciation in the relationship. And then a relationship where people feel appreciated can tolerate change better than a relationship that's brittle.
So you make someone feel secure first before you introduce too much something that could be damaging.
Genuinely.
That's what you try to do. That's
Right.
what you should try to do.
Yes. Yeah. Because, and what happens is that if you're keeping a secret, what you're doing is you're increasing distance between you and your partner. And try to lean into your relationship and be as authentic as possible. I want you to know I'm having feelings that have been really troubling for me. I'm starting to acknowledge a part of me that I've been suppressing for a long time, but as I'm doing this, or as I'm freeing up this, or I'm not working so much, I can't get away from this. Then you're talking about feelings, and that's much different than me walking in saying, you know, hey, I have a crush on somebody at work and I want to go hook up with them. Can I get a green light for that?
Right.
You know?
Isn't the most challenging thing, though, that, you know, someone who is bisexual, maybe they might have acknowledged it to themselves, maybe not, and then later on they don't know what their feelings are that they're having, and they end up in an affair, not really intentionally, but kind of falling into it. Is that a common thing?
Yes. There have been so many people that I would say are bi-open or bi-curious, and then what ends up happening, they're around somebody whose kind of vortex of energy pulls them in. So you might have a very seductive lesbian who's working with a straight woman, and the straight woman says, I never acknowledged that I was attracted to women before, but now that I'm around this person who has such an alpha presence, you know, they start to feel stirrings sexually. And that's where you see a lot of people, like maybe in their 30s and 40s, that have never acknowledged same-sex attraction before. And they'll say, I don't know that I'm bi, but I'm very attracted to this same-sex partner. And those can be disruptive to marriages, but I've seen people work through that. Sometimes they go back into these very secure marriages and they're able to talk about it. They're able to say, I'm having these feelings, and their partner's just like, tell me more about that.
What about if you stumbled into an affair, and now you're in the affair, and you have a spouse, and now you realize this isn't right in some way, I need to kind of deal with this with my spouse or end it or something? Like, what do you recommend if they've stumbled into the affair and now they have to deal with that?
It's always better. It's always easier to do that when you have a moderator. You know?
Oh, yeah.
You know, I mean, because those are. I'm not looking for business, but those are courageous conversations. Is how I like to think of them. You know, where it's really hard to tell the truth to someone who's not going to be happy hearing the truth. And so, what a therapist does is they help hold that space for you to keep it safe. And so I work with a lot of couples in conflict, and that is the kind of thing that they'll bring, you know, in, and they'll talk about, I'm just not happy about some aspect of our relationship. I need something to change. Can we talk about this? And there's a part in talking about change where people negotiate, you know, as far as, can this work for me or won't it work for me?
Right.
But you don't want to rush through that process and kind of throw out everything good because you're feeling injured. And that's why you want to slow those conversations down to see what could work.
And as you have said before, and many people don't realize this, but marriage is a negotiation.
Yes.
Marriage is a contract that can be adjusted over time.
Yes, it's a living and breathing kind of entity. You know, I think about, it's like you start off with this idealized sense of who we're going to be together, and then as time goes on, people's priorities change. And so then you keep coming back and navigating, like, this is something that's really important to me. Wow, that I don't particularly like that, but I'll tolerate that. I was talking to one couple that are friends of mine, where the one person wants to do a lot more international travel related to her work, and the partner likes having her home all the time. Right. So that's another kind of negotiation, and they actually have this great relationship where every year they sit down and talk about, what does our relationship need this year?
Really?
I love that.
Yeah,
yes.
That's really smart.
Yeah.
So if you are a bisexual person and you are dealing with the idea of coming out, you know, to your spouse, how important is it to see a bisexual affirming therapist for that?
It would be helpful to see it. So here's the thing, we talked in one of the videos before about therapist bias, that if you go to a therapist that has a strong bias and doesn't understand that you love your spouse and that you're trying to explore this part of your identity, they might, if they have these heteronormative standards, try to force something on you. Right. You know, and feel like, oh, I want to be protective of your spouse, you know, and so they're either identifying with the victim that they feel like in the marriage, which is a problem, or they're thinking that you're just eventually going to be gay, so just get on with it. Right. And you don't want that kind of a bias influencing you. So definitely find somebody that's willing to deal with the complexity of a bi identity in a relationship where two people care about each other.
And I'll go ahead and I'll put the links to places you might be able to find bi-affirming therapists at. And also a few links to that might be helpful, including perhaps the email address, your email address,
sure.
Which is?
MaryAndres@gmail.com.
Excellent. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
And if you like the video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe, because I do many videos on a bisexual topic and a few where I'll be talking to the doc here. Until the next video, stay cool, my bisexual friend. Stay cooler. Bye.